Evolutionary Underground Supplements, episode number 4. Today we're talking about N2Guard with oral steroids. We get this question a lot on the forums, Mobster, with guys who want to run oral-only cycles, or they want to run orals with their injectable steroids. So N2Guard is very important to be using with oral steroids, and we're going to talk about it in this podcast. So let's first get into Need to Build Muscle. So Need to Build Muscle, look, they've been around a long time. I can remember when they first started back in the old days on the forums, and they were started by a couple guys who basically spent their life on the forums helping people design cycles and all this stuff. And they decided, hey, let's start our own supplement company, but we want to be more hardcore. We want to cater to people who use anabolic steroids specifically for on cycle, off cycle. And that's why they came up with the company Need to Build Muscle. And the original owner of the company, he actually ended up selling the company. And since then, it's been basically improved quite a bit. And they keep coming out with high quality supplements. And the number one supplement that they have, the number one selling supplement, is N2Guard. They have a lot of good supplements, but definitely N2Guard is number one. And I swear, when you're using N2Guard, you could feel the difference when you're using it. And when you run out of a bottle and you're on cycle, it hits you like a ton of bricks once you stop using it. In terms of the side effects, like all the side effects seem to hit you at once: the blood pressure, the insomnia, the fatigue, lack of energy that sometimes we get on anabolic steroids as our bodies get toxic. Because you remember, these anabolic steroids are very inflammatory in the body, and they are toxic in the body. So oral steroids specifically, they're very toxic on the liver. Although all steroids do stress the liver, especially because we're using them at 5-10 times what they're medically designed to be ran. So we're going to talk about all this on this podcast. So Mobster, tell me a little bit about N2BM, and when did you first learn about them? Because for me, it was like, it had to have been about 13, 14 years ago when I first heard about them. And that's when I started using their products. And it really made a big difference in my cycles and my post-cycle.
Steve, only recently I realized how long I'd been on the forums. Well, I haven't been on the forums as long as you have, and wasn't as familiar with Need to Build Muscle as long as you have. I realized just the other day, I think I'm coming up on 5 years, which surprised the hell out of me. Time's gone really, really quickly. Need to Build Muscle, Steve. I looked into this, and I've used some of their products, as you know, specifically N2Guard, obviously, as we're discussing today, 100%, and a couple of the other products. I've got particular ones that I'm a bit of a fan of, and other ones, like any product line where you go, okay, it's plain and simple, it does what it says on the tin, but it's not super special. Creatine would be an obvious example. So why Need to Build Muscle? I think it's exactly like Steve just said, right? And I've owned a supplement company, so I know how this works. To create a properly formulated product with high quality ingredients, the right extractions, the standardized extractions, and so on and so forth, is expensive, guys. It's hard, right? Especially when you look at a number of ingredients here. When you look at the 2 or 3 top products that need to build muscle produce, including Need to Generate, you realize this is a complex, properly thought out formulation. And that's taken time. I believe Steve will confirm this, where the original owners had to work with experts in the industry, sat down and discussed how we can get one ingredient to work with another ingredient to get the dosages right. Like I said, making sure you use a standardized extract, making sure you're using the right part of the plant, and so on and so forth. That's hard. It would have been way beyond my company back in the day, Steve. I kept it very straightforward, very, very simple: creatine, protein, glutamine, nothing complicated at all. And again, even stuff like getting to buy a company that can make this for you the way you want it to be made, to buy enough at once to bring the cost down for you so there's a profit. All of that stuff's real difficult. It's why they've, in my mind, Steve, they've only got 3 or 4 top really hardcore products that are properly aimed at people like us that do steroid cycles and want to protect ourselves, want to recover from training, want to, for example, one of my other favorite products that they do is Need2 Joint RX. Why? Because I can tell the difference between that and a cheaper joint product. Like Steve says, I notice the difference when I'm using N2Guard. I notice the difference when I'm using N2Guard. And that's just a given. I'm old enough, probably older in that particular regard, as Steve just said, to go back way, way back to the original liver protections that first came out a long, long time ago, Steve, probably 30, 40 years ago now, and know that the science just gone on from there, notice that the formulations have improved. So I know how this works. And like I said, I've owned a supplement company the other day. I know just how difficult it is to produce this. And I've enough knowledge, as Steve does, to look at the ingredients and know the work that's gone into a product like this. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, and the good thing about this, I have a doctor friend of mine. I show him the supplements, and show him N2Guard, bottle of N2Guard, and I say, look at these ingredients. Tell me what you think. Be honest. He looks through it and he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, this is a lot, Do you really need to take this much stuff? The ingredients, the dosing, this is a lot. And look, when you're using anabolic steroids, remember, you're using 5-10 times medical usage. So it's not like you can just take, a handful of milk thistle that you get from the drugstore off the shelf and take a little bit of milk thistle, and that's going to, really, really make a difference in your liver, because it's not. I mean, look, when you run blood work and you see your AST and the ALT and you see those numbers spike, let's say it goes to 80 or 90. I'm going to use 100 as a nice round number. Let's say it goes to 100, right? And then you go to the drugstore and you pull out milk thistle off the shelf. And you take milk thistle as it's shown in the dosing. Look, that's for old ladies, okay? That's for old ladies who have some liver issues. She's older. Her organs aren't running or functioning the way they should. Oh, those are for old guys, 80-year-old guys. All right? That may work for them. But if your AST and ALT levels shoot up to, let's say, 100, and you grab that milk thistle off the shelf at the drugstore or at the GNC or the vitamin shop, all right, it might drop your AST ALT like at one point. It might drop to 99 on it. I mean, and I'm saying it's not going to do anything for you. Remember, you're using these oral steroids. They're very, very toxic. All right, so you got to fight fire with fire here. So N2Guard, it's got a bunch of liver ingredients. And we're going to get into that in one of the next segments. We're going to go over how many different they have. They've got 6, 7, 8 different liver supplements alone. But the good thing is they have 44 ingredients total, and they all work in synergy to help your organs. So just because it's got something in it that's not specifically for liver doesn't mean it's still not helping your liver. Because if it's helping other organs, then it makes life easier on your body, and it de-stresses your body, and it causes anti-inflammation in the body, and it helps your liver, even though it's not directly helping your liver. But they have a bunch of ingredients that directly help the liver. So this isn't a product designed for an 80-year-old grandma or grandpa, but they can still use N2Guard. I use it off cycle. Okay. It works great off cycle, but you don't have to use it as the recommended dosing. So that's why the doctor said, oh my God, this is so much ingredients. Well, you have to fight fire with fire. He's used to a different clientele. So Mobster touched on that a little bit, and then we'll get into the science behind what happens when you take an oral steroid, because a lot of people don't understand that.
So here's the thing, guys, and this is something that athletes, and I say athletes specifically, Steve, rather than, as you said, your grandma or whatever. Right. So in order for us to get to be big, strong, muscular motherfuckers, we're kind of doing stuff to ourselves. Forgetting steroids for a second, Steve. We're trying to make something happen to our body that our body doesn't want to do. So, for example, you talked to that doctor friend of yours, and especially back in the day, right? And you said, "Oh, I'm taking 300 grams of protein a day," or something like that. And they go, "Oh, that's a stress on your liver. That's a stress on your kidney." Same thing with creatine. Oh, because they confuse that with creatinine as a blood marker for an issue in your blood, for a marker in your blood, sorry, should I say, which potentially has an issue, right? So here's the thing. We are trying to do fucked up shit, whether we're fighting in the ring or boxing, or whether we're lifting crazy ass weights or running around the track 100 miles an hour. We're trying to make our body grow. We're trying to run faster. We're trying to be more athletic. And it's a stupid amount of stress on our body. And if everybody was doing it, it'd be easy, but not everybody does it because it's hard. The same thing applies to eating quite high amounts of protein. And then it's just stuff like the breaking down of muscle tissue in our bodies and replacing it with thicker, stronger, better muscle tissue than the last time, and so on and so forth. All of these are stressors on the body. And that's without getting into medication, which we're going to touch on, real life, smoking, drinking, and God knows what else. So we are trying to do something, if not toxic, certainly stressing the body. And anything that can help us deal with that physical stress in this example is something we need to think about. One thing I will also say, Steve, and I see guys do this, right? They'll spend $1,000 on a cycle and then bitch about buying 2 bottles of N2Guard because it's so expensive. Is it a cheap product? No, absolutely not. But when you hold it up against the amount of money you've spent on your cycle, it's a cheap product. And in order to protect you, so you can grow, so you can stay healthy, I think it's worth every single penny. Guys, you've got car insurance, you've got home insurance, you've got health insurance. Don't bitch about spending a few extra dollars than you want to when you've already spent that kind of money on training, on those new shoes that you wear to the gym, and all that kind of stuff. And then definitely when you're spending money on a cycle to grow. So for me, it's worth every penny, Steve. And like I said, we're already trying to do stuff to our body which is stressful without adding steroids into the mix. So anything that helps us and protects us has got to be worth the money. Back to you.
So let's get into the science. Now, this podcast, we trust the science. All right. So this is the podcast for you if you really love science and you want to take a look at the science. But the black and white answer to when you use oral steroids, go get blood work done. And you'll see, get before and during blood work done, you'll see a clear strain in your liver. So let's take a look at a PubMed study. And this is what the PubMed study found. And this is what we talk about in this podcast too. The way these oral steroids are structured, they have chemical substitutions on the testosterone molecule that increase potency and duration of action. That's the whole point. That's why these steroids were designed. So most of these steroids were designed for medical purposes to help with fighting muscle wasting, to help with anemia, to raise red blood cells and all that other good stuff and help you build mass. So we use them in bodybuilding and in fitness to give us a performance enhancement. That's the whole point. So that chemical substitution that they have to do is going to cause them to add a 17A alkylation modification, which allows the steroids to be taken orally. But the slower clearance in the liver makes them more hepatotoxic. So that's why you notice when you use oral steroids, and some oral steroids are worse than others, and we'll get into that in the future segment as well on this podcast. We're not going to leave you guys hanging on that. We're going to cover that. But that's why you'll notice your liver values get strained. And the frequency and severity, it says the frequency and severity of side effects depends on several factors, including the formulation of the drug. So we're going to get into which ones tend to be more liver toxic than others. Route of administration, dosage, duration of use. Now, dosage, we like to use a lot when it comes to how much anabolic steroids we use, when it comes to oral steroids specifically. So let's say Anavar medically was designed to be used at 2.5 milligrams a day. Well, we don't use 2.5 milligrams a day as males. We jack it up. We use 30, 40, 50, 60, even 100 milligrams a day as males. Same thing with Winstrol. Winstrol might have been designed to be run 2.5 milligrams a day or 5 milligrams a day. We use it at 50 milligrams a day. We use it 10 times, 20 times more. So when you're doing that, obviously it's going to become hepatotoxic. So, and this study shows it. And if you run blood work, which any of you can do, just come on the forum and check out the link to run blood work. You can get blood work done yourself. And you can see this right there in black and white. Also, some people are more sensitive. And we're going to get into that later in the podcast. We're going to talk about tips to make your liver strong so you don't get too much liver toxicity. So at the end of the day, you know, when you have liver issues on cycle, a lot of you are saying, well, Steve, what does it matter? Our liver is very resilient. It can come back. The problem is when you're on cycle, it's going to make it difficult to get good results because you're going to be tired. You're going to have insomnia when you have a strained liver. There's a lot of disadvantages to having a strained liver. And it's very, very important. And it can lead to other issues later on. Fatty liver disease, tumors. You can have chronic vascular injuries. You can have something called acute cholastic syndrome. And you can have permanent elevated liver enzymes effects on your blood work. So we don't want that. So we want to do this the smart way. There's absolutely no excuse for you to not be using N2Guard here and not be using these good quality supplements that N2Guard has to help when you're on cycle and then when you come off, to help give that liver a break and help it cleanse and help it detoxify. So Mobster, I'm going to turn it over to you on this segment. Give us your thoughts before we kind of get into the N2Guard ingredients.
Right. So I'm old enough, Steve. I was just thinking as you were talking then, I'm actually old enough to remember athletes back in the day having serious liver issues. And this was before there are good, solid, then, not now, as we're talking about N2Guard today, but when the liver protectant type products came out, the number of athletes that were having liver problems dropped off. The athletes are pushing the envelope all the time. So there was always going to be athletes back in the day that were pushing, compared to the average user, the amount of oral steroids or injectable steroids they were using. I think something Steve said in another podcast or two was that we're talking about oral steroids specifically today, but all steroids, injectable or oral, have issues, and some injectable steroids can cause liver issues. And like I said, I'm old enough that I remember when there was no liver protections. We were told to take loads of vitamin C, drink more water, Steve. That was it. And then Milk Thistle and Live 52 came around. But that's probably like 25, 30 years ago. But prior to then, there were magazines mentioning that such and such a diet or such and such a stopped competing and could no longer go to the big contests or wherever because they're having liver issues. And then, so obviously, supplement companies and doctors and whatever else started looking at what was causing the problems. And when there's a look at products, in simple terms, what Steve just said is quite simple. I use the phrase methylation, but it's the same with what Steve just touched upon. Quite simply, your body wants to break down a steroid, especially an oral steroid, into its basic constituent parts. And your stomach's broke it down. It goes into your blood supply. We want it to go to the muscles. We want it to create an anabolic or androgenic effect. And your body doesn't. It doesn't need more testosterone. It's all it got. You kind of have to force it to happen. And the simple fact of the matter is, as Steve said, in order for that steroid, anabolic, oral or injectable, to be absorbed into the body, but specifically oral today, they had to treat the product in a certain way to allow what's called first pass through the liver to happen. And that, unfortunately, is a stressor on the liver. Then it gets into the system, and then the magic happens that we want. But that's what caused the toxicity. That's what caused the issues. And again, I'm old enough and ugly enough, Steve, been around long enough, never mind steroids, to know people that have had cirrhosis of the liver. And like Steve says, it can recover. But if you're drinking alcohol every single goddamn day at excessive levels, the chances of you having liver issues are massive. If you've got a serious medical condition and you take super powerful medication that's been prescribed to you by a doctor, some of those medications come with liver toxicity issues. And just a simple staying alive is a difficulty because you're stressing the body with the very medication that you're taking. And that's without getting into other issues, which we're going to touch on later on. So the simple fact of the matter was, there didn't used to exist products of any kind, and I'm just about old enough to remember that, to protect you. And now we have products like N2Guard, Steve. So we needed them. We didn't have them. Now we've got them. So guys, you've got no excuse. Make sure you invest a buck or two to look after yourself. Not only that, guys, it's going to give you a longer shelf life. It's going to help you with your gains long term. It's going to mean that you can carry on with cycles later on, and hopefully, fingers crossed, not help yourself, guys. There's no guarantees in life, but we're doing our absolute best to look after ourselves as much as we possibly can for the reasons, Steve. Back to you, Steve.
So let's go over some of the ingredients, and N2Guard are really good for the liver. So look, all your vitamins, the vitamin D, E, C, B, these are all good for your liver. and they all play a role in maintaining your liver health. So, but look, you can buy these vitamins in a multivitamin. They're not hard to get. And a lot of you out there, you don't have a problem with these vitamins because you eat a good diet. So these, this should come hand in hand. But if you don't eat a good diet and you're not getting a multivitamin, then you might be deficient in this. So that's going to obviously hurt your liver. And we see that a lot with people, as it is. So, but N2Guard, they have so many good things in here that help your liver. TUDCA, first of all. And TUDCA is it's the most powerful liver detoxer around. And it's great for your liver overall. And it's the original N2Guard, 10 years ago, didn't have TUDCA in it. So once they added it, it became an even better formula after they added it. So it's a very, very important ingredient to see. So any liver supplement that doesn't include TUDCA today is a garbage supplement, because we know today the science is in at how good TUDCA is. And TUDCA is even used in hospitals, so in modern medicine, they even use TUDCA for liver issues and organ issues. So we know this stuff works really good. Luckily, it's synthesized today. Originally, it was not. And it was very inhumane the way they would get TUDCA originally. But now they can synthesize it in a lab. So it's very cheap and it's very easy to get now. So it really needs to be in any type of liver supplement. So another one, Pricolive. And this is great for the liver, just the name, Picroliv. I mean, it ends with LIV. So this is a great supplement. And Pricolive, this is an ingredient, very, very important ingredient, very powerful supplement. And it's not a cheap supplement to get. If you were to buy it from the store, I mean, a bottle of it could run you, $25, $30, $38. So it's not a cheap supplement to get, but hey, it's included in this formula. And there's enough in here to really, really help. And it works great in conjunction with these other compounds. Another one, milk thistle. And back in Mobster's day, a lot of guys, his age group, they know milk thistle. That was the go-to supplement when it came to the liver back then. And again, as I said earlier in the podcast, using milk thistle by itself, okay, it's good. But if you think it's going to really, really make a difference just using it solo, when you're using these oral steroids, then you're fooling yourself. So again, great. Milk thistle is great for your grandma, but for a steroid user, it's just not good enough on its own. So it needs to be used with these other products as well. So Mobster, tell us a little bit about milk thistle. I know it's one of your, back in the day, you guys used to use it a lot.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research on this when it first came out, Steve. On the other ingredients that Steve's mentioned already, especially the vitamins, you're helping to boost your immune system. And a quick side story, guys, a friend of mine, I think, has got Crohn's or colitis, a medical issue, serious problems with the lower intestine, and he can lose a lot of weight. And I had to point out to him the other day, trained for 21 days straight, a very high percentage of his maxes, and was basically smashing the granny out of his immune system. So anything, and all those vitamins that Steve listed, that support the immune system are super, super important. On the milk thistle, something I'm going to touch upon now very quickly, guys, is all of the ingredients that you're looking at have to be the right form. So whether that's an extract from the seed, from the leaf, from the stem, from the root, it needs to be the right form, and it needs to be a standardized dose. So I've done this on a previous show, Steve. When milk thistle first came out, there was an original formulation, I believe Polish, might be wrong, Bulgarian, I think, actually, I tell a lie. And they'd managed to get a specific form of the plant, which would be, in this case, I think it was the leaf then, it's the seed now, when they realized it's even better. And it was a kind of mixed batch when it arrived, but they kind of broke it down, extracted what they needed from the whole plant or whatever the hell it was they had. And they found literally that it was helping deliver in the athletes that they were working with in Bulgaria. Over time, supplement companies went crazy. Companies like NeedToBuildMuscle started to look at these kind of products and say, could we get this? Could we get that? And what happened is you had a lot of poor form and a lot of great form. If you had a super healthy leaf from the right plant in the right part of the world, delivered to your company, and you broke it down into the isolated form, you had a great product. But if you had the cheap stuff, the bottom of the bag, ash and broken down dry leaves and whatever else, or you had only have the root, or you only have the stem, and you wasn't getting it from the right plant, you got something, but you really wasn't getting what you wanted, which in this case, Steve, is the milk thistle seed extract. You wanted a specific form. So again, this was something that came along. It was in the original first famous Live 52 that I back in the day, along with a bunch of vitamins, exactly like we got here. But the form was super, super important. Live 52 was great at the time. N2Guard is great now for these reasons. And in this particular case, like I said, it's the right form in terms of the seed extract at the right dosage at 300 milligrams. Super, super important. And guys, we talk about this on shows like this. We say, go away and do your own research. What is the right amount? Where does in this case, where does the plant come from in the world? What part of the plant do we want? How much of that part of the plant do we want? And what form does it come in? This is the right form, the right amount, from the right place. Back to you, Steve.
So let me touch on a few more of the ones in N2Guard that are really, really good for the liver. So parsley leaf, it's got parsley leaf, and parsley is great as a liver protectant. I try to use parsley in a lot of my dishes. I cook some Mediterranean dishes, and I definitely add parsley to it. So that's another good reason why you should use parsley. And parsley produces glutathione in the body, so that naturally protects the liver from damage. So it's really, really good. And bitter herbs as a whole, they stimulate the release of bile, so that's going to help the liver detox in its own right. So it's a really, really good option in that situation. Polyconosinol, and that's another good one. It's going to help cholesterol production in the liver. So it indirectly is really, really good for the liver as well. You got dandelion root. And dandelion root, we all know it's like a mild laxative. It helps with digestion. A lot of you may have already tried it. Maybe your grandma has some that she uses. But there's some research that shows that dandelion helps improve liver function. So we want to use that. Turmeric root. Studies show that turmeric supplements reduce some symptoms of non-alcoholic fatty disease. So that's another option. So, we can go through the list of all these products, all these supplements that are within N2Guard, and they all have different benefits. And like I said, even though they may not directly help your liver, like Procolove or Tutka, for example, or milk thistle, they actually do indirectly, because they all work together to make everything run good. So if your other organs are working good, your liver, there's going to be a better chance that your liver works good too. So we have a lot of options here with the N2Guard. So it's really a great formula, and all these ingredients it's just an amazing, this type of formula that they put together here. I really, really impressive stack. Go ahead, Mobster. Yeah.
I'll give you two specific more that are specifically beneficial to the liver, guys. One is Uva Ursi leaf extract, 75 milligrams, and the other one's thiamine at 25 milligrams. Now, as Steve said, it's something that's super important, guys, and it's difficult sometimes for the newbies to understand why other ingredients are included. And here's a phrase that we like to use here, Steve, is synergy. Okay, so what makes some form? Look. Again, I've been around long enough to see what's called the bucket version of ingredients. So companies will hear about an ingredient and they'll just throw that into the mix. They won't bother with the right form. They won't bother with the right dosage. They just put it in there because we can put it on the label, and people are going to read about this ingredient and they're going to buy it. And it's literally just throwing it in with no idea. Now, sometimes what happens here, guys, is it's not synergistic. It doesn't work well with other ingredients. We're even going to get into the reason why you shouldn't take oral steroids and N2Guard at the same time. You need to separate them for this very reason. You want each ingredient to work with the other ingredients to produce an overall, a synergistic effect that makes it worthwhile. For example, we could probably, if we would need to build muscle, we could up dosages on certain things to make it look good on the label, lower the dosage on certain things to produce a better profit. That's how stuff sometimes works in the industry. Again, if you don't care but you want that ingredient you don't appear on the label, and you're honest enough to do that, but you don't care enough to make it work better, then sometimes they will have too much of something, not enough of something else, and so on and so forth. You want everything to work together to produce a synergistic effect, so that overall the body is healthy. Overall, your skin shines, your skin health is good, your acne is lower, your pee comes out the right color, all of those kind of things, while you're training crazy hard, while you're eating tons of protein, and while in this example, you're using oral steroids to create an anabolic effect. So you need all these ingredients to work together. They need to be the right amount, the right ratios, taken at the right time to produce the best overall effect. So like Steve says, I challenge you. I want you to go down the list of ingredients for yourself. As an example, Steve, and I've had this big discussion with a state registered nutritionist in this country. And I mentioned this, touched on this earlier when I talked about a way of protecting the liver way back in the day, high dosage vitamin C. And so I'd been brought up on the idea that 1 to 2 grams of vitamin C, when I say brought up, I mean in training terms, 1 to 2 grams of vitamin C was the dosage that you needed to take if you're using steroids to keep your skin looking good, to help you manage the anabolic and harsh anabolic side effects. In reality, the effective dosage is between 200 to 600 milligrams. And he had a big argument with me, and I'm back and forth because I've been brought in, and he pointed this out. He said, look, daily dosage just for normal health purposes, 200 milligrams. If you're going to go crazy on steroids, if you're going to use oral steroids, you're going to use injectable steroids, up it to 600 milligrams. At the same time, there was a big argument. I think his name was Paulin, the guy whose missus had got cancer, and he went crazy. And because he got a Nobel Prize for something or other, unrelated, unfortunately, to cancer, he had people taking, it's talking about 5 to 10 grams. So that's 5 to 10,000 milligrams per day. In reality, it has some effect, but there's no point superdosing it all the time. And again, if you haven't got cancer and you're just looking to protect yourself from a cycle, you don't need to go with crazy amounts. So as an example here, Steve, there's 250 milligrams. And again, that's because we're on an oral stack of steroids. So we've gone slightly over. Plus, you should have a good, healthy diet that's producing some vitamin C from other sources. So really, you're looking probably something like 400 milligrams a day with this product and perhaps a vitamin product and the food that you're eating. You're going to be very, very close to that optimal number that I talked about already, the 600 milligrams on cycle, which is exactly what it should be. So therefore, again, something like this, even with the healthy diet and the training and fruit and vitamins that you might already be taking with this product, is going to get you very, very close to that optimal number. And again, that's what the designers and formulations of this product thought of when they designed and put some of these ingredients in there. There's another one in here, Steve, that just helps with the absorption, the pepper extract, just the absorption of the ingredients. So you're getting as much out of the product as possible. These are all super important, guys. You should have this in mind. If you ever sit down to design a product, or here's the thing you can do, guys. One more little challenge for you is imagine that you know something about this and you try to work out a formulation for yourself. And I bet you, if you put some real work into it, 1 or 2 listeners put some real work into it, you'd actually end up with a product that includes all these ingredients at these dosages, at these ratios, that work together and the right kind of form. And you go, hang on, I've worked out for myself what a product like this should be like, and it's exactly like what N2Guard's come out as. Back to you, Steve.
Yeah, and you got to remember on oral steroids, it's not just the liver. You're also straining your kidneys. You're also straining your heart. You're also straining your immune system. So there's more things in N2Guard which will help you with. And maybe we'll hit that on a future podcast, get into it. But I'll go over some of the ingredients. Astragalus root extract. It's great for heart disease. You got red yeast rice. A lot of the old school guys back in your day, Mobster, you guys would use this for cholesterol when you use steroids. We're talking about I'll go through the list here. Beta-1314-glucan. Great for cholesterol. Great for inflammation. Great for the immune system. You've got yerba mate. Great antioxidant. Great for your energy. Because oral steroids sometimes some of these oral steroids are really hard on your energy, Mobster. So this helps with that. I can go through the list here. It's got omega-3 fatty acids included. A lot of you aren't getting those. You're not getting your omega-3s. This is going to help with your heart disease. How many people do you know who have heart issues? How many family members? And guess how much good fats they get on your diet? None, zero. They get literally zero good fat in their diet, and they have heart problems. This covers you. You've got more stuff. You got garlic fruit extract, great for as an antioxidant, great for the heart. You've got hawthorn berry. That's popular. That was popular back in your day, Mobster. Great for blood pressure, great for cholesterol, great for other heart issues. Apple pectin. We talk about fruits a lot on this podcast. We're one of the few podcasts that do that. But apple pectin, why? Great soluble fiber. It's great for your digestion, great for your heart health, great for a lot of different stuff in the body. And then coenzyme Q10. Go to any Eastern medicine doctor. When you've got heart disease, this is what they're going to tell you to take. And a lot of Western doctors too. This is one of the top supplements for the heart. So if you're using these oral steroids, and we're going to get into the next segment, we're going to talk about which oral steroids are worse in a couple segments from now. But we're going to talk about which ones are worse. Some of the oral steroids are really harsh on your heart health, and some are harsh on your liver, and some are harsh on both. So it's got all the vitamins and minerals. It's got the folate, the B12, got calcium, iodine, magnesium, zinc, selenium. I can go through the whole list of vitamins and minerals that has all these vitamins we need to help with our health overall. Because when you use these oral steroids, they're going to wreck your health overall. So very, very important. All right, so Mobster, you touched on that a bit.
Yeah. Couple more, guys. So you're taking an oral steroid, and an issue with some oral steroids, and I think specifically Steve here of Dynabo is a great example, where some guys will retain water. I actually kind of like that because I've mentioned it on other podcasts because of the water around the joint, the swelling, both intramuscular and sometimes underneath the skin. It's actually going to improve my leverage for benching, but not everybody does. So one of the ingredients in here, Steve, is dandelion root extract at 200 milligrams, and it's a natural diuretic. It will help reduce some of the water retention and or bloat some users will struggle with. Another thing that we've talked about on other podcasts when we talk about some oral steroids, and again, I'm thinking of Anavar in this example, Steve, and it's not harsh oral steroid, but the pumps can be horrendous. I've had proper Anavar pumps, and it's seriously uncomfortable, guys. Great for the strength of the gym, but the pumps can be it's just too much, especially when I'm not lifting in the gym, literally walking down the street. So they've got taurine at 233 milligrams just to help you with those painful pumps. Another one that's a boost for both the heart and the immune system, Steve, selenium, 25 micrograms. And something else that's actually had a standalone ingredient that a lot of people are big on fans of. And I know some people actually go off and buy this from the approved sources in different forms. And let's see if I can pronounce this properly, because I don't think I say it a lot. L-glutathione, and 100 milligrams of that. Now, I might be mispronouncing that, guys, but if you look it up, it's an amazing, reduces cell damage in the liver, improves insulin resistance, and helps with oxidative stress. And the damage in the liver is specifically why guys are looking for this. And I think it's actually one of those ones, funny enough, Steve, that helps with the discomfort from crazy hard training, with the breakdown of muscle tissue and whatever else, and an overall a boost to your health specifically. I mean, here's the perfect cycle, guys, would be taking this oral steroid or injectable, training like an absolute maniac and feeling amazing, coming out with better skin, better muscular, leaner than you did before. In my case, stronger than you did before, but feeling great. And that's precisely why we're using a product N2Guard for those particular reasons. So yeah, back to you, Steve, for the next one.
So let's get into how to dose N2Guard oral. So Mobster touched on it a little bit, but it's very important not to use N2Guard with your oral at the same time, because they'll kind of hurt each other, and the N2Guard will actually make the oral less effective. So you want to use it at least 90 minutes before or after. So that's very, very important to use it that way. So I would give it at least an hour and a half, 2 hours. So if you're gonna take your oral at 9 o'clock, you want to take the N2Guard before 7 p.m. or after 11 a.m. in that situation. That's it. It's as simple as that, and it won't interfere with it. It'll actually help if you do it that way. So it's very, very important to do it that way. And look, at the end of the day, 7 capsules of N2Guard a day is what's recommended. Now, if you're using a harsher stack, you can go higher. If you're using less of a hard stack, you can go a little lower, 3 to 4 caps. Off cycle, I'm not rich. I'm poor. Steve is poor. You guys know that. I have to use it 3 to 4 caps off cycle. But when I'm on cycle, I use it 7 caps or 10 caps, depending on how harsh my cycle is. Makes a big difference. So it's all about saving you guys money in the process. I don't want you guys to, I want you guys to save some money, but I'm not sacrificing my health to save money, because in the long run, it's going to cost you more if you sacrifice your health. Go ahead, Mobster.
Yeah, so here's what I sometimes see. And guys, you know that I'm very straightforward in the way that I talk, sometimes almost to the point of rudeness on the forums. I'll admit it, but I don't care to admit it. It's no problem for me. So here's what I sometimes see, right? You're happy to spend $1,000 on a stack steroid cycle, orals or injectables. But then you'll go, oh, this is $150 or this is $200. Why should I go? And then and the great one, and I know why you're saying it, guys. We've all been there. Like Steve said, Steve's tripping over their caviar jars going into the office to record this podcast. But all joking aside, I don't understand the logic, or really the fact that you spent $1,000 on, and it's $1,000 is typical, on a steroid cycle, and then say, I want to cheap out. Can I take 4 pills or 5 pills? Will that have some effect? Yes, of course it will, because you're using something to help boost your ability to recover from an oral steroid stack, as we're talking about today. But you're using a less than effective dosage. And like I said, people have sat down, the original owner has sat down with highly regarded people in the industry and tried their absolute best to produce a very effective product. And you want to use less of that than you should. So in my mind, the guys that are trying to be cheap and go 4 pills or 5 pills, or sorry, 4 capsules or 5 capsules, guys, I understand why you're doing it. But to my mind, if you're going to spend $1,000 on a cycle, don't start that cycle until you've raised enough money to run the protections like N2Guard at the right dosages too. Now, I will also agree with Steve, as we will touch upon it momentarily. There are some steroids, which are oral steroids especially, which are especially toxic compared to, say, for example, again, Anavar and Dynabol. It just is. And I can understand the logic again, and especially, guys, if you can afford it, of running a slightly higher dose. Now, for the most part, when guys come onto the forum and they say, how many of these capsules should I take? And I'm like, read the label. It's right there, 7 capsules. I've got an empty pot in front of me right here, Steve. 7 capsules. Run it properly, or run it slightly overdosed, rather than try to skimp out and run it underdosed. If you're happy spending all that money on training, on those great Nike or Adidas shoes, on the amazing Garth tracky bottoms that you're wearing, and you're going to a gym that's costing you a certain amount of money per month, and you're happy to put gas on your car and all those other things just to go to the gym, trying to save a few bucks here and there by going a couple of capsules left makes no sense to me. So either run it at the dosage it says, which is 7, or even slightly higher for the harsh oral steroids that we're going to get into now, Steve. Back to you.
All right, so let's kind of go over the orals. I get on this question a lot. Which orals are worse than the others? And look, we're going to have to depend on blood work for this. And the blood work that I've seen to determine which are worse and which. Now, obviously, it's dependent on dosing as well, because some oral steroids, if you run them at a certain dose, they can be just as liver toxic, even though they're more mild than the other ones. So, we just go through the list. Anadrol, it is 17 alpha alkylated. It is liver toxic. Is it more toxic than other steroids? I would say above average when it comes to effects. Anavar, liver toxic. Is it as liver toxic with some of the other steroids? Probably not. I would say it was kind of in the middle when it comes to that. Then you've got Dianabol. Dianabol, I would say, is a little more liver toxic than the average. Proviron, I would say, is below. Proviron on paper, it's actually not 17 alpha alkylated. So it's going to be more mild, and it's not going to hurt your liver like these other steroids will. So, but it will have some effect. Any foreign substance you put in your body is going to have an effect on the liver. It doesn't matter what it is. So even Proviron, even though it's not liver toxic on paper, because we're using it at the doses we're using it at, it's still going to have some effect on the liver. Supratrol, I would say, is way above average when it comes to liver toxicity. Definitely one you want to be using 10 capsules of N2Guard with. Turinabol, I would say, it's 17 alkylate. I would say it was more average. And then you have Winstrol, and I would say Winstrol was above average when it comes to liver toxicity. It's definitely liver toxic. So that would be the kind of, if I go over these orals, the main orals that we usually like to use, that would be the effect. And Halo would be above average. Halo is very, very toxic, even at a tiny 10 milligram a day dose. It can be very, very liver toxic in the body. Go ahead, Mobster.
I was going to actually say halo testing, Steve. I mean, there are a couple of drugs that our strength athletes use. Halo testing is one, and the other one, I believe, is check drops. There's another name for check drop, guys. Please look it up. So here's the thing. If you, and again, I looked into both of these as an idea of using them to boost my strength. And I think I'd even include oral tren here, Steve. So I have zero issues doing oral cycles, and we've had backs and forth with other members on a forum who disagree about how long you should run them for. Quite simply, Dynabol, for example, I would run 6 to 8 weeks, no issue. The most recent cycle I've done included Dynabol just the last couple of weeks, funny enough, because I was using Anivara as well. And I've had a bunch of oral cycles which have been 6 to 8 weeks. Very rarely run them longer. However, when I was looking at halo testing and check drops, and for that matter, oral tren, pretty much every expert out there back in the day and now has you running these short periods of time. In fact, in the case of the check drop, Steve, 2 weeks. And I've never used it even for 2 weeks. I've only actually ever used it as a booster on the day of a competition. But those of the recommendations which included the 2 weeks said that the reason for that was quite simply the liver toxicity. And check drops is comes in an injectable form, funny enough, guys, but you take it in the micrograms under your tongue, literally a drop from a syringe under your tongue. And it gives you a fantastic aggressive boost on the day of a competition. But to use it as an injector as it was originally intended, I've never seen a stack or recommendation from any guru that says you take it for more than 2 weeks. And that's because it's such a stressor on the body. So yeah, there are definitely some that are worse than others. And that's without getting into dosages. If you run these oral steroids, and especially the harsher oral steroids at higher than needed dosages or higher than normal, you'll push. It's like racing the car that much faster, Steve. The chances of issues become that much higher. Now, something else we're going to touch upon is we're talking about oral steroids and protecting ourselves with a product like N2Guard. What we're not including is what you do outside of the performance enhancement, what you do outside of the gym. So we will occasionally have people come onto the forums and they'll say, I'm young. My buddies and I have got a keg party this weekend. Can I take this stack? Let's say it includes oral steroids. And can I go to the party and have a few beers? And what do we answer? The answer is quite obviously no. Because no young guy goes to the gym. I mean, you have to be a saint or a bishop or something, Steve, to go to a party and only have a couple of beers with his buddies all night. In reality, what's going to happen is going to minimum 4 and probably a lot more than that. And the reality of the situation is asking for our permission to go and get drunk with his buddies and do an oral stack or an injectable stack of steroids. So there's that. So that's a stressor that's not mentioned. And the guys will come on the forum, give you all kinds of PD and anabolic type information. I lift this much, my chest is this big, I weigh this much, how long I dress to the left, all that kind of information, but they won't mention that they drink, or they won't mention that they do certain recreational drugs, or they won't mention that they have a medical condition. And this is something else that Steve and I were talking about in the pre-show, where some over-the-counter, non-prescription medications can cause stresses on the body, whether that's to the gut in the case of anti-inflammatories like ibuprofen, Advil, as you call it in the States, Steve, or other medications, and that's over-the-counter medications, which in and of themselves at higher dosages, and I'm talking about the upper level of what you're supposed to take, can cause stresses on the body, including your cholesterol, including your blood numbers, including your liver and your kidneys. And that's without prescribed medication that you get given to by a doctor through a pharmacy for a specific medical condition. So those are stressors on the body as well. Touch on that, Steve.
Every time you drink alcohol, some of your liver cells die. And the liver is a very, very strong organ where it can regenerate new cells. But what happens over time is the more you do it, the less it can regenerate. So eventually it's going to get to the point where you have less and less of liver cells in the body, and your liver really behaves very, very bad when it comes to being able to do its job. And you're making life hard on your liver, you're making life hard on your body. It's very, very stressful. So look, at the end of the day, if you're listening to this and you drink alcohol, every day, I know some people that drink alcohol every evening, they'll drink alcohol. And just the propaganda out there by beer companies and wine companies and liquor companies and commercials, and it really is the way they make it sound is like you need alcohol just to have a good time. You need alcohol to be happy, and you don't. Take it from me, someone who hasn't touched alcohol in 15, 20 years, and I have no reason to touch alcohol. So it's so much better on your body to just avoid it completely. But at the end of the day, you got to make that decision on your own. And even drinking alcohol once a week is not good for you. So let's just be honest. It's going to strain your liver. Oral steroids on top of it is going to strain your liver. And if you expect N2Guard to save you, then I don't know what to tell you. N2Guard is not a magic pill here. It's not. If you're going to do everything wrong and then think N2Guard is going to save you, then you're fooling yourself. But N2Guard works well when you allow it to work well. And you can only control what you can control. So if you're throwing a bunch of drugs at your body, you're throwing a bunch of alcohol at your body, and you're taking oral steroids on top of it, what do you think is going to happen to your liver? What do you think is going to happen to your kidneys? What do you think is going to happen to your heart health? What do you think is going to happen to your brain health, your immune system, all that stuff? So it's all about being healthy. So really my tip is avoid alcohol. If you want to protect your organs, you need to avoid alcohol completely. There's no benefit to alcohol. There's no health benefits to alcohol, guys and gals. All right. No matter what the wine industry claims, no matter what the liquor industry claims, I love the whole one drink a day is good for you. Studies show that one drink a night is good for you. Look, those aren't real studies, guys. Those are the wine companies. Those are the liquor companies putting out propaganda, and they're biased. They twist the studies, just like saying Cheerios is good for the heart. I'm sure a lot of boomers out there believe that, when in fact the FDA has sued Cheerios multiple times and told them, please stop saying that because it's not true. But what happens is grains are good for the heart. And then Cheerios says, oh yeah, it's good for the heart. It's the same thing. It's lies. It's propaganda put out by food companies and liquor companies. So you need to eat healthy. You need to drink healthy. Water. That's all I drink is water. If I need to add some electrolytes from sweating a lot, I'll add some salt, and I'll eat a pinch of salt and a pinch of cream of tartar to my water to give me some electrolytes. That's it. I don't use electrolyte drinks. These mixes, they're all full of additives. I don't use that. Just water. Our ancestors drank water. Animals in the wild, they drink water. I mean, so these are tips that can help your liver, guys. And when it comes to using oral steroids, don't abuse them. Don't run them for too long. Don't run too high of a dosage. And make sure you're using your N2Guard. Very, very important to use your N2Guard, at least on cycle and post cycle. If you can use it off cycle, that's even better. But it's a must, and it's completely mandatory on cycle with anabolic steroids, 100%. So Mobster, give us your thoughts, some tips.
Well, I want to ask you a question, Steve, because you're US based and I'm not. And then I'm going to give you one more tip or two just as we roll into the end of the podcast. Something that Steve and I talked about in the pre-show, and it's becoming more common here, Steve, but the US is especially common, is I think you touched on it, the amount of drugstores and the over-medicated, and I mean over-medicated. I've seen the same documentary that we talked about, which was to do with Big Pharma, just how much pharmaceuticals, over-the-counters and prescribed medications are used in the American market versus the UK market? Something you know more about than I do. I want to touch on for myself, guys. This should make kind of obvious common sense when Steve's just talking about low alcohol and more hydration, especially when you use an oral steroids. You will get better results if you have a better diet. And of course, a healthy diet is going to be that much healthier for you, full of vitamins, green leaves, different colors of fruits and vegetables. See way too many posts from young guys that can't cook or, and I quote, don't like vegetables. Listen up, motherfucker. If I was your mum or your dad, I'd be like, grab you by the ear. I would say, eat it because it's good for you. It doesn't have to taste nice. The problem is that we're too saturated with sugar and sweeteners and God knows what else. And that includes the sauces and seasonings that are added to so many food to the point where you can't eat a carrot as it comes, or you can't have a lettuce leaf as it comes. It has to have some sort of dressing on. Guys, learn to eat healthily, and that's good for you. Learn to eat healthily in the right ratios for a cycle, and your results will be better. And of course, the healthy part is super important here. You'll be getting vitamin C from your fruits and your veggies, from juices that you make yourself. So that's super important. But touch on, as I've just said, Steve, the overprescription of medication in the American market, which is slowly creeping over here into Europe and to the UK as well, before we finish up.
Yeah, so a lot of people don't realize these drugs that you guys are using. And look, you know, pharmaceutical drugs are an amazing thing. They prolong life. There's people alive today that I know, they'd be dead a long time ago without prescription drugs. So, but the idea is we want to, you know, not use them unless it's absolutely necessary. And we see this a lot. And one of the things we talked about in the pre-show, Mobster and I, is if you go to the drugstore, we have drugstores on every corner in America. Every corner. You go to a different country, you don't see that. I couldn't even, look, I went to the Dominican Republic a few years ago, and I was like, well, I want to go check out, you know, the pharmacy there. And because I know they sell steroids there in the pharmacies. So I wanted to go to see a pharmacy. I didn't see a single pharmacy. Like if you want to go to a pharmacy, you have to like ask the taxi driver, take me to a pharmacy. He's got to drive, you know, he's drive 15, 20 minutes off the road, off the highway to find a pharmacy. But in America, you can walk to a pharmacy. It's on every corner. There's like 2 pharmacies on every corner. So we're definitely overdone. And if you go in there, you see the people in line, they've got alcohol in one hand, cigarettes in the other hand, and they've got candy bars in another hand and cookies and boxes of bars. And it's just, guys, I mean, come on, if you're doing that, don't you see the idiocy of what you're doing? Like, don't you see the connection? You're eating all this, putting all this junk in your body, and you need these prescription drugs to be able to put the drugs in the body. And then it's like just a cycle of nonstop ridiculousness. So we want to, look, it sounds hypocritical, but it's not. Like we're telling you oral steroids, and then we're saying you're eating these oral steroids. We're telling you, you know, you're using these oral steroids 5, 10, 20 times the medical dosage, you know, but we're telling you to do them the right way. We're telling you to use N2Guard with it. We're telling you to not use every drug under the sun. If you're on 5, 10 different drugs, you should not be touching oral steroids, you know? So that's kind of the point of what you're telling you. So you can control what you can control, okay? You can control not buying alcohol. You can control not buying cigarettes. You can control not going and eating fast food. You can control taking care of your liver, sleeping good at night. Those are things you can control, okay? We can't control certain things. We can't control, you know, our environment being so polluted. Those are things beyond our control. You know, we can do our best to help out and, you know, help clean the environment. We can help, you know, clean up the environment where we live and stuff. But some things, the air we breathe and all this stuff, some things are beyond our control. But you can control what you can control is what I always tell people. So Mobster, finish up and take us to this guy. I think it was a great show.
Like Steve says, do your absolute best with your diet, your environment. If you are on a certain number of over-the-counter medications, think about the reason why you'll take them. Improve your lifestyle if you're taking prescribed medications that you don't need to take because you're too goddamn lazy to improve your lifestyle. That includes cutting down on smoking, drinking. It includes eating better. Those are all things, like Steve says, that are within your control. Now, of course, we're talking about performance enhancement, guys, so we can't say don't do that because we're doing it ourselves. So what we're talking about here, like I said right at the beginning, Steve, is an insurance policy. we're doing our best to protect ourselves with a solid ass product like N2Guard from a great company that's an approved source like NeedToBuildMuscle, to do the absolute best to maintain a great and vital level of health as we possibly can, and then to enable us to be protected so that we can do other cycles in the future and be big, muscular, strong freaks like we want to be. Keep that in your minds. Please note, we are not doctors, and opinions are ours. It's our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcast of informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.